welcome back to another episode of The Jaylee Show. This week is a special one, kids. Not gonna lie, I learn more from this person than I do from most people I follow. It's an important subject that we've all been through in different varying degrees, right? Stress is here to stay. We're not gonna get rid of it. And what Katie has, today's guest, she shows us that you can't sprint a marathon, right? She's gonna say that again and again in the show. And essentially what she's talking about is consistency. You can't be consistently running in the red. You can't, because you're just not going to be able to have the longevity that you're looking for and the ability to actually keep doing month after month, working at your complete peak. So Katie's got some phenomenal ways, tips and tricks, and just ways to make sure that you're doing what you need for yourself, taking care of the engine, right? Physically and mentally, so you're able to work consistently for a long time at peak performance without burning out, without having stress be something which is detrimental, and instead getting to that point where work is exciting and fun and busy and pressured, but it's not putting you in a hole in a place where you can't do anything else. So look, I could rant about this for weeks and months on end. There's in no way that I'm even half as eloquent as today's guest. So without further ado, the wonderful Miss Katie Maycock. What's going on, everybody? Good to see you, and thank you for coming back for another episode of The Jaylee Show. Thank you for everything you've sent through. Really appreciate it. As always, lots of love to everyone who's joining the show. This week, we have a return guest and one of my favorite to follow, listen to, send the occasional DM to when I need a little help, and genuine just learn from. And unlike some of the guests we have on, which might be really relevant for some people and not others because they're kind of bespoke, Katie is absolutely bespoke in a specific industry. However, it is relevant to us all. I don't care where you work, what you do. If you don't work, just life in general, Katie's got some things which can actually help you get through it. And I honestly, just from personal experience, have genuinely used her teachings. I'm making her sound like a guru, but hey, I like to build people up pretty hard. But I've literally listened to the things she said, and it's helped us in this business, in my life, in my existence. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the wonderful, the fantastic, the marvelous Miss Katie Maycock.
What an intro.
Thanks.
What an intro. That was a good one. I appreciate it. The fact that you called me a guru, that makes me just cringe just a tiny amount, but that's okay. We'll go with it.
I kind of made myself cringe as well, especially because everyone in our industry is a social guru or a social ninja. So I hate that term completely.
And I call out gurus, I call them motivational Martins or whatever the gurus that usually don't know what they're talking about. But hey, that's okay. I'll go with it. I'll own it today. And
for the kids out there who haven't heard of you yet, you tell them about yourself, Katie.
Look, so obviously my name's Katie Maycock. And I have two businesses, one being Get Your Shit Together, literally and figuratively, and the second one, which is Omnia Wellbeing. The sole purposes of both businesses is to talk about the impact that stress has on our physical health, our quality of thinking, so how we process information, and what that means for performance. And so typically I work with sales team, recruitment companies, things like that. But anything that's got high pressure or high stress, I typically work with those types of people and companies as well, helping them manage stress and hopefully prevent burnout. But if they're burnt out, I usually help people get back on track after that as well. So yeah, that's what I do.
And you're perfectly within your rights to call out gurus, because unlike a lot of coaches and gurus and people out there who will tell you that they have absolutely the answers, although they've maybe never done something beforehand. I'm constantly looking at social media coaches and I'm like, but you have terrible social media. What I really like about your story, Katie, is that you've genuinely been through burnout, not once, not twice, but multiple times throughout your life and career. So it's not a case of just writing a recipe from this might work, but you've gone through it, and the tools and tactics which you talk about are self confirmed, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something there's two sides, right? I've gone through it myself. Should I have known better? Absolutely. I have a degree in nutrition and physiology. So technically I actually know how the body works. I understand the impact that stress has on the body, but I kept on going back until it really I really understood what burnout was and what stress could do to the body. So yeah, I think that there's definitely something that there's in it with that. And for me, it's always talking about what's worked for me, what's worked with my clients. And here's the thing, there's not one way to solve this. It's actually meeting you where you're at and figuring out what you need. And so obviously everyone's got a different journey, everyone's got a different story, and everyone's different where they're at. So it's making sure that we're meeting you where you're at, and we're providing the right information that makes sense to you. Because otherwise, I have like, there's not one way to solve everything
No,
at the end of the day.
no, there's not a one size cookie cutter fits all kind of, just do these three things and you'll beat stress forever. Which is why I
Unrealistic.
don't. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? Just take this pill. Now, I think one of the most interesting parts of when I've heard you talk about burnout for me is the fact that the excitement, the when business is super busy and everything's kind of rolling and rocking, is only kind of shades away from potentially like flicking over and that being too much. But up until that point, it can be incredibly exciting, fun, and like all time consuming and a positive thing. And then it kind of flicks over all of a sudden for at some point for some people. What do you think makes that change in between I'm loving it and I'm killing it to you know what, I really don't want to do this anymore?
Yeah, so what's really interesting when we're looking at the excitement piece. So when we look at the first stage of burnout, it can be excitement. So thinking about when you started a new job, a new career, or something's happened, and I think back to the pandemic when we were first starting to work together. I think it was kind of scary, but it was exciting because it was like, okay, how can I solve this problem? And as a business owner, it's scary and nerve wracking, but it's also like, okay, cool, like looking for the solutions and things like that. Um, but the thing is, with excitement, what typically happens with that is that we can create unrealistic and unsustainable habits. So we might throw things like diet, exercise, sleep out the window because we generally just really love what we're doing. We're probably not resting as often as we should. We're probably not switching off. I speak to a lot of new salespeople and they feel like they can't switch off, but they genuinely do like what they're doing, right? It's not like they're like, I hate this, but I have to be on. But what happens is that's really, it's okay in the short term. But when you're consistently doing that, it's actually really not good for our mental health, our physical health, and our emotional health, and things like that. And the other thing is, as well, you've got to look at the pressure performance curve. So anyone that's ever looked at the pressure performance curve is pretty much, it's a bell curve, which we look at. If we don't have enough pressure, we're probably going to be demotivated. We're probably not going to be driven, all that kind of stuff, probably a bit bored.
Okay.
If we put the right amount of pressure on ourselves, we can end up performing at our optimum. So everyone's going to be really different. So depending on where you're at, who you are, your life journey will depend on how much pressure you can take. However, that can easily turn into stress, which can then actually start having the negative impact, which is, not being as focused, not being as not being able to concentrate, making more mistakes, having that brain fog. And then it's obviously a hop, skip, and a jump over to burnout as well. So I think it's that understanding the right amount of pressure. And obviously, I could go off on a tangent about pressure. We've obviously got internal pressure and external pressure. So,
What's the difference?
so you can have external pressure, so pressure that's put on you. So let's say you are in a sales role. You obviously have your KPIs, you've got your target, you've got all the things that you need to hit. If you're not in sales, you've got deadlines, you've got whatever you need to do as well.
You've got a boss telling you that something needs to be done by
Yeah,
yesterday. Yeah, sure.
yeah. But then you've got the internal side, which is the pressure that you put on yourself. So this could be, when I was a salesperson, this is the reason why I burnt out. In my head, I had a target. I had a physical target from my boss, but internally I had a target. I was like, I have to be 150% to target every single month. I have to be, otherwise I'm a failure, which is really ridiculous. And obviously it's not always going to happen that way, but that was the amount of pressure that I put on myself to do that. And so, there's all these different internal pressures, and we can look at, it's not just work, right? We can put pressure on ourselves from being the best parent, the best, partner, the best sibling, whatever it is, the best friend or whatever. And we can put so much pressure on ourselves, and when we kind of fall short from that, we can be quite stressful, and it can be quite
Well, and that's
challenging.
the thing I've found with anyone that I've spoken to who's gone through the burnout process. Nearly all of them are, and I've seen a tiny snapshot in comparison to yourself, Katie, but um, everyone seems to be the type of personality who really wants to succeed. Not necessarily salespeople, but business owners, people who like, I want this. I want this to be fantastic, and I want to put everything I've got into it. And I think maybe the thing, and I personally really blame a lot of it on the kind of 5 years ago, the Gary V, all that kind of sect of people who were like, work until you die, and
Hmm.
had that kind of really toxic, just work, work, work. Entrepreneurism became really cool all of a sudden, and then it was you meant to, but all of a sudden you had entrepreneurs with rock stars and athletes. standing up in lineups and on red carpets. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then this kind of cultural thing happened, same sort of time as there was loads of WeWorks of people just working and working and working to be like, oh, I work twice as hard as you and I work twice as hard as that. And I think, that mentality is necessary now and again. You've got to be able to put the pedal to the metal because business is ebbs and flows and sometimes you need to get it done. But for those people who want to be high performers, I think the thing they forget is it's definitely a marathon. We're 7
Yeah.
years in. We're 7 years in, and I spent at least 3+ just running and gunning the whole time. There wasn't breaks. We didn't go on holiday. No, that's my team did. I was like, you've got to take a break, man. But for me, I'd work until the night, and same with my business partner, and same with a lot of the business owners I see. And I think it's so important to listen to what you're saying because those people want to keep being able to be super productive or super efficient or whatever it is. And it's not just salespeople, but it does seem to be a lot of salespeople as well.
Mhm. Absolutely. I think the thing is, I always say to people, one of my favorite sayings that I say to every business owner, anyone I speak to, you can't sprint a marathon. There's no way you can do that. You just can't. You're gonna burn out. You're gonna, if you try to sprint a marathon, I guarantee you, your legs will seize up, right? And that's just what it's about. But I think one of the biggest things is when we're looking at that resilience piece, we have to have resilience to tackle any goal, right? We're going to have moments where it's going to be really stressful. We're going to have adversity to overcome and things like that. Man, I've been running my business for 4 years now, and it's not all been roses and peaches and all that kind of stuff. It's not been easy. It's been really challenging, and being able to understand when to push, when to slow down, because my natural setting is just to overwork. That's just who I am. I actually really love what I do, and I always want to do. I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, so I've got to be really careful with that. So it's easy for me to get into the realm of working all day, every day, and I have to be really careful not to do that. But I think other people, what you have to understand, going back to the resilience piece, if you think about resilience as, if we use the gym as an analogy, you're not going to go to the gym every single day, all day, every day, and work the same muscle, right? You're just going to end up injured. You're going to end up hurt. You're probably not going to get the results that you want. Resilience is the same thing, right? You have to push and you have to challenge yourself. You have to make yourself uncomfortable. You have to put yourself under pressure. But putting yourself under pressure consistently for a prolonged period of time is just going to push you over into that stress. You need to know when to push and you need to know when to back down. And I think a lot of the times with the kind of people that I talk to and work with, it's, you hear, we go back 5 years ago or 10 years ago, even in the noughties, we're hearing, no rest days, and I worked, all the hours, 20 hours a day, and that's
4
why
a.m.
I'm
club.
yeah, that's been around. But I think one of the biggest things with that piece is, it's not sustainable, it's not realistic. You're not going to be able to do it, and you have to understand when you need to back down. And I think that conversation back then was push past through your limitations. And most of the people I work with have already pushed past their limitations and they're way far down the garden path towards burnout, right? It's about understanding your limits, pushing past them a little bit, but also knowing when to back down. And that can be quite challenging for a lot of people because everyone's really different, right?